let's dive right in. We'll just start with a very basic question, which is, what is SB COP? Tell us about it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for joining me. Sorry for my voice. Not a good way to start the week on the climate here. It's going to be a long week.
A lot of talking.
Yeah. But SB COP we copy, to be honest, what was the design of the B20 helping the G20. There was a tradition on the G20 for almost 20 years that the private sector get together to help the public sector to engage. So what we did after Brazil hosted the G20 last year, very successful case of the private sector helping the public sector. And we decided to copy that at COP. So it's an innovation that Brazil is bringing. So what we have is a group of, we have 68 associations of industry and commerce around the globe that are on my board today that represent around 41 million companies to sit together through task forces. And what we have to do is to present to the negotiators of COP recommendations of what they want to do. On the B20 last year in Brazil, the document that we presented for the negotiators, 72% of what we recommend was on the final paper for the G20. So based on that success, I say, let's try to replicate, organize better the private sector to engage with the public sector. Of course, this is much more difficult. The G20, you have 20 countries. It's not by consensus. And here on the COP is 198 countries, and it's by consensus. So if one country, a small country, or a large country like China, if that country does not agree, it will not move forward. So that's the challenge, of course, but we are trying here is to better organize the private sector to engage with the public sector.
That's amazing. So for Daniela, taking over to you, why don't you start first with just a bit about what maybe your top priorities are for your company, but then how you are working with SB COP right now as well.
Yeah. So at Rhodia Solvay here in Brazil, we have a very emblematic plant. It's our green plant in the world here. We are producing more than 1.2 million tons of chemical products per year, and we are already 95% carbon neutral, and we have the expectation to be totally carbon neutral by 2030. So it will be one of the first in the group in the world. And my area was energy transition, and it was a great job, and I thank very much Mussa for the opportunity. We have chosen 3 priorities linked to the worldwide needs, but also linked to what Brazil can offer to the world. So first, energy efficiency, because the best energy is the one that you are not using. Okay, and we discussed a lot how to apply new technologies to brownfields, to plants that are already working, to minimize as much the energy consumption. Second point, renewables. Okay, we really believe that Brazil has a huge potential. Today, Solvay is using 100% of green electricity here in Brazil, but how to continue to use more and more, and how we can use technology to help the grids, to help the infrastructure to be optimized, to be able to have more eolic energy, more solar energy coming to the daily use of the industry. And the third point, sustainable fuels, that is also very important. So when we talk about maritime transportation, when we talk about air fuel, how we can advance and have even more mandates in place, and how we can show to the government the importance to have to work in the segments that are difficult to abate. So these were the 3 focus that we have included as priorities. And the point, we have very good cases in all the segments to show that it's possible to be done. It's just a matter to put efforts on it.
Case studies, or showing actual cases and work is the absolute best way, I think, to prove the case, as we were talking about earlier in another session. But Ricardo, over to you. Obviously, we've heard about one of the areas. Can you share a little bit more about what are all the areas that you're covering, some of the companies that are leading some of this work in addition to Solvay?
Of course, yeah. We divided ourselves in 8 different, what we call task forces, so 8 different teams. Energy transition, I think one of the major ones, so Daniela, so it's the CEO of Solvay. We invited, like Daniela, CEOs to run the different task forces. So we have 8 task forces. So we have financing the transition, that is Luciana from Flying Rivers. We have food systems with the CEO of JBS, bioeconomy, that we have the CEO of Natura. We have green jobs and skills, the CEO of Schneider Electric, your sponsor here. So what we did was asking for each CEO, it's a pro bono work, so Daniela is working for free on this one, myself too, and they invite other CEOs from other countries. So I give an example. The CEO of JBS, he invited the CEO of Nestle, from Bunge, from PepsiCo, the Minister of Agriculture of Nigeria. So they form a group of experts that together with a consulting company, they come up with recommendations. One thing that was very clear to us, and that was a learning from myself, when I was on Daniela's role on the B20 3 years ago in Indonesia, we presented 68 recommendations, and on the week of the negotiation, nobody read that. It was a completely nightmare. So when it came to Brazil last year, said we have to only have 2 or 3. So what Daniela designed here, I asked for each chair 2 or 3 recommendation max, because then we have to present that prior to the COP. So we presented that in New York almost 2 months ago. So we have enough time to do some advocacy. And then we can influence the negotiators to be able to really make an impact on the COP process. So again, learning from experience, that's what the private sector do very well. We learn from our mistakes in the past, and we're implementing here. And hopefully next year, Australia or Turkey that will take over the role, they'll do even a better job.
So tell me a little bit more along those lines about the SB COP awards.
Of course, because when you are talking about influencing on the COP, it's very tough. It's 198 countries. How are we going to get everyone aligned? So we said, what's the best way to influence the public sector is through examples. Because when you have 41 million companies and 30 years of experience, because that's the 30th COP, we do have, statistically, I'm an engineer, statistically speaking, you have a lot of cases that went well, didn't went well. So we decided to say, let's ask for those 41 million companies, send us your best cases. We are going to select the best ones. And because the UNFCCC recognized SB COP as part of integrated, we are given a place inside the Blue Zone. We will be able to showcase the cases. Of course, the private sector, the company, they want to be recognized. So we started to receive thousands of cases. Of course, we filter those cases. They must have economic return, very important, has impact on the climate, so has to reduce emissions, has to be a case that is successful, already proven track record, and must be scalable around the globe. So when we received those cases, we selected among more than 1,400, 600 that came on the filter, and each team, including Daniela's team, they selected 6 cases. So we are going to showcase during COP 48 cases that represent better what are the things. And once you understand why that particular case of success, what are the conditions that made it a success, was the policy in place, the finance, the market, and based on the success of that case, you can influence the public sector. So I was more excited, to be honest, about the awards than on the recommendations. Recommendations is more, not say academic, but it's something, but the cases, it's very difficult for you to say, okay, this is a real example, have the track record. So if we replicate what's happening in Malaysia, in Brazil, it will work.
So I heard, if it's true, that your sector, or I guess vertical within this, received the most awards selection. So how did you select?
No, it was very difficult, and I think that it was really a pleasure to be able to see more than 200 projects with top quality, with concrete cases that it is possible to really have the energy transition being done in our countries. More than 50% they were in Brazil, but by the end of the day we have selected different 6 projects from the world, so they are divided in all the regions. We have one project from each region, but very, very good cases. The most difficult job that we had was to select the 6 ones that we really liked. And it was a very good experience because we had 42 countries part of the energy transition group, very different opinions. But when we look to the final 6 cases, we are very comfortable to say we have 6 champions here, and we can show to the world that it's just have the opportunity that we can do what is what's necessary to be carbon neutral. So it was a very good job done.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that is a lot to go through, and also this that along with everything else that you were doing.
We are going to all those cases for those who are listening to her here. You can it's public. So not only the 48 cases that are the finalists, but all of them are public. So there is an e-booklet that anyone can access, see what's the best ones that are out there. So it's something, of course, for us to show to the rest of the globe what the private sector is already doing. The idea was, let's be pragmatic, and let's not talk about new things. Let's see what's already working and what we can replicate.
So obviously there's, as you just mentioned, quite a lot of recommendations that are being proposed as Belem and COP30 is about to kick off. As we are looking to it, and it is about to kick off, what are you really both hoping to see come out of this COP, and what are you really hoping to tell the policymakers?
I think there are 2 things. If I give you my personal view, so when I look into the history of COPs, each COP has a different legacy. So if you go to Paris 10 years ago, the legacy was the Paris Agreement, everybody got something. If you go 2 years ago in Dubai, it was much more about fossil fuels. Last year in Baku was the 300 billion on the final, not enough, but 300 billion. I think Brazil has a few things. We're going to have the TFFF, other things, but in my view, that's the COP that has more invitation for the private sector to engage. So that's number 1. I think the other thing that I'm seeing is a structure for implementation. So we're really talking about real stuff, and let's focus on the implementation piece. So I'm expecting this COP to be more pragmatic and talk more about what can be done and the plan for the near future. So I'm excited. Of course, we have a lot of headwind on logistics, what's happening in the US, all the crises around the globe, the trade war. But in my view, this COP is a COP that has more openness for the private sector. And I'm excited to see we having a plan for the next 5 years. It's not something, I think they structure how the presidency of COP, André Correa do Lago, Ana Toni, and Dani Office, how they designed. It was a good design. I think we're going to have a good legacy, not only because it's in the Amazon, but the way it was arranged, inviting the private sector to step in. I felt like really they are listening to us and we are being able to have a huge interaction.
Eu sinto que eles estão nos ouvindo e a gente vai conseguir ter uma boa interação. Tendo dito isso, o pessoal está falando bastante que essa é a COP das ações, né? Então nós esperamos realmente sair dessa COP com alguns mandatos para que os países de fato percorram um caminho para chegar na transição energética da forma sugerida, mas muitas das empresas, como dissemos, estão muito envolvidas. Eu vejo empresas de diferentes indústrias dizendo, olha, se eu tiver um mandato ou se eu tiver um financiamento mínimo, eu vou investir nisso. Então, é uma possibilidade real para atingirmos objetivos de curto prazo. A gente não precisa pensar em 2050, a gente pode pensar em 2030. Então, nos próximos 5 anos, o que a gente vai fazer de fato, né? Eu vou ser carbono neutro em 2050. Ok, mas como? Estou pensando, estamos desenvolvendo, estamos analisando. Então, não tem projetos reais, né? Acho que esse é o momento de termos projetos reais na mesa para realmente chegarmos à neutralidade de carbono assim que possível. Falando sobre dados, eu sei que vocês coletaram muitos dados, né? Você consegue compartilhar um pouco das tendências que você viu nos dados que você coletou de todas essas empresas? Olha, eu estava falando com a Daniela antes de vir aqui. Eu nunca viajei tanto quanto eu viajei esse ano. Quando eu me encontrei com CEOs por todo o grupo, uma coisa que eu percebi é que essas discussões de sustentabilidade costumavam ser as prioridades número 1 ou 2 há uns anos atrás. Hoje estão mais para baixo nas prioridades. Por outro lado, a tendência em si, eu acredito que não mudou. A prioridade é diferente, estamos num ciclo, mas a tendência em si existe, não tem um CEO que fala, isso não me preocupa. Então, uma coisa que é clara é que hoje a gente está separando as coisas, então aquele greenwashing está deixando de existir, mas a direção de todas as empresas com as quais eu converso não mudou. Então, os dados, claro, são muito mais subjetivos, mas para mim, eu acredito que o que a gente está vendo agora não vai mudar a direção. Então, provavelmente no próximo ciclo, nós vamos estar mais fortes, os melhores projetos vão sobreviver e vai haver mais financiamento para esses projetos, porque vamos ter menos competição, menos ruído dos projetos ruins. Então, é uma visão otimista, mas eu converso com muitas empresas, petróleo, gás, mineração, empresas de todo o mundo. E eu sinto que essa tendência, esse caminho não mudou. Então, para mim, esse é um bom sinal. Eu conversei com mais 200 CEOs de diferentes localidades e não mudou. A ordem das prioridades, sim. Nossa, acho que todo mundo nessa sala, e eu me incluo nessa lista, ficamos muito felizes de ouvir isso. Muito obrigada por compartilhar. Daniela, palavras finais que você gostaria de comentar sobre o que você aprende com a sua empresa e nesse projeto da SBCOP. Teve alguma mudança nas prioridades de vocês? Sim, teve um momento que todo mundo discutia que os mesmos produtos podem ser fabricados de diferentes formas.
And this is something that we would like to bring to the final consumer to take the decision. As when you have your device at home is informing the quantity of electricity that you consume, we would like to have, for instance, the same kind of thing for carbon footprint, because you can have this share produced using green electricity, using renewable raw materials, etc., and you can have it done in a completely different way with a carbon footprint that's 2-3 times higher. Okay, so this is one point that we would like to show the good students that are doing their homework to reduce the carbon footprint, and was very loud in the group that we want to show it to the final consumer, to let them take the decision as well. I agree with Mussa that the sustainability continued to be one point, but the speed was a little bit reduced inside the companies. But the final consumer has the potential and the force to bring it back to the #1 position inside the companies again.
Well, Daniela, Ricardo, thank you so much for joining us and talking about it. I'm very excited to see what is accomplished. I want to talk to you after COP and see what was able to get accomplished and what the percentages of recommendations that actually go through. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.